A billionaire paid him $40,000 to be her husband. She never expected his 7-year-old daughter to change everything. The conference room on the 47th floor of Hartwell Industries smelled like expensive coffee and quiet power. Victoria Hartwell sat behind her glass desk, her navy blue gown catching the afternoon light that poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's skyline. She wasn't dressed for a board meeting. She was dressed for a war, the kind fought with appearances, not weapons. She checked her phone, 2:58 p.m. He was 2 minutes early. Good. Her assistant knocked once and opened the door. "Mr. Callahan is here. Send him in." Ethan Callahan walked in like a man who had nothing left to lose, which technically he didn't. 32 years old, dark hair slightly overgrown, gray t-shirt under a blazer he'd clearly borrowed from someone taller. His eyes were sharp, though, the kind of sharp that comes not from privilege but from surviving things that should have broken you. Victoria studied him the way she studied quarterly reports, quickly, efficiently, without emotion. "Sit down, Mr. Callahan." He sat, didn't fidget, didn't look around the office the way most people did, wide-eyed at the view, the furniture, the quiet declaration of wealth in every corner. He just looked at her. That was unexpected. "You read the terms?" she asked. "I did." He leaned forward slightly.
"I have one question before I agree to anything." Victoria raised an eyebrow. Most men in his financial position, drowning in medical debt, behind on rent, a daughter depending on them, didn't walk in here asking questions. They walked in nodding.
"Go ahead," she said, keeping her voice flat. "Why me?" She studied him for a moment. Then she opened a folder on her desk and slid it toward him. Inside was a background check, thorough, invasive, and deeply personal. "Because you're honest," she said simply. "In my world, Mr. Callahan, that's rarer than any amount of money." He looked down at the folder, then back at her. $40,000, he said slowly. 6 months as your husband on paper, attend 3 public events a month, 1 family dinner with your parents at Christmas, and sign whatever documents your lawyers prepare. Correct. And in return, you get your grandfather's inheritance clause satisfied, that the Hartwell estate passes only to a married heir. Correct again. And we don't, he paused, choosing his words carefully, pretend beyond what's necessary. Something flickered across Victoria's face, so brief he almost missed it. Almost. "This is a business arrangement, Mr. Callahan, nothing more." He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Chicago hummed 47 floors below them. Indifferent, enormous, alive. Then Ethan Callahan reached across the desk and picked up her pen. He signed. What Victoria had not accounted for, what no contract, no background check, no careful calculation had prepared her for, was Lily. She met her 3 days later. Ethan had mentioned a daughter. It was in the file. Lily Callahan, age 7, mother deceased, father sole guardian. Victoria had noted it the way she noted footnotes, acknowledged, filed away, moved on. She was not prepared for the small human who stood in the lobby of her building on a Saturday morning, holding a stuffed elephant missing one eye, wearing rain boots printed with yellow ducks, even though the sky was perfectly clear. Lily looked up at Victoria with enormous hazel eyes and said, without any preamble whatsoever, "You're really pretty. Are you magic?" Victoria blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Daddy said you live in a building that touches the clouds." Lily pointed upward with absolute authority. "That means magic." Ethan appeared beside his daughter, a diaper bag over one shoulder that was clearly repurposed now as a regular bag, a slight look of apology on his face. "Lily, we talked about this. You can't just—" "She asked a reasonable question," Victoria heard herself say. Both father and daughter looked at her. Victoria crouched down, a thing she had not done in heels since approximately never, and looked Lily in the eye. "I'm not magic," she said, "but the elevator goes very fast. Does that count?" Lily considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Maybe," she said finally. "Can I press the button?" "Every single one if you want." Lily's face split into a grin so wide and so completely unguarded that Victoria felt something shift in her chest, quiet and unexpected, like a room she didn't know existed suddenly having its window cracked open. The arrangement was supposed to be clean. Scheduled appearances, coordinated photographs for the press, a wedding ceremony, small, private, attended by exactly 8 people including their lawyers. Rings purchased with appropriate symbolism and zero sentiment. Victoria had designed it to be airtight. What she had not designed was Lily calling her on a Tuesday afternoon because Ethan was in a meeting and the school play costume needed emergency glitter glue, and somehow, Victoria's assistant had given the child her direct number. "I need gold," Lily said. The moment Victoria answered, no hello. "For my wings, Miss Patterson said we have it at home, but we don't. And the play is Thursday." Victoria sat in the back of her town car, mid-route to a shareholder dinner, staring at the phone. "How did you get this number?" "The nice lady at your office, she has very good cookies." Victoria made a mental note to have a conversation with Sandra. "Gold glitter glue," she repeated, "and maybe silver, in case." There was a pause in which Victoria Hartwell, whose net worth exceeded the GDP of several small nations, tried to remember the last time anyone had called her for help with something that wasn't a crisis involving millions of dollars. She couldn't. "I'll have it sent over within the hour," she said. "You're the best," Lily declared, and hung up. Victoria looked at her phone for a long moment. Then she told her driver to stop at a craft store first. She bought gold. She bought silver. She bought a kit with 12 different colors because she stood in the aisle for 4 minutes and couldn't decide, and it felt suddenly, strangely important to get it right. Ethan found out, of course. He was standing in the kitchen of his apartment, modest, warm, covered in Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, when Victoria arrived with a paper bag from the craft store and an expression that dared him to comment. He didn't comment. He just stepped aside to let her in. Lily descended like a small, joyful hurricane, seized the bag, inspected the contents, and then threw her arms around Victoria's waist in a hug so sudden and complete that Victoria stood perfectly still, arms slightly raised, like someone who had forgotten the instructions. Slowly, carefully, she lowered her arms and hugged the child back. Over Lily's head, she looked at Ethan. He was watching her with an expression she didn't know how to categorize. Not surprise, exactly. Something gentler than that. Something that made her look away first. The months passed the way time does when you're not watching it carefully, quickly, and full of things you didn't plan. Victoria learned that Lily's elephant was named Gerald and had survived a washing machine incident in 2023 that was very traumatic for everyone. She learned that Ethan made coffee too strong and got up at 5 a.m. to read, and that he never once asked her for anything beyond what the contract specified. That was the thing about him that kept catching her off guard. He didn't want anything from her, not her connections, not her money beyond what was agreed, not her admiration or her approval or the social elevation that proximity to her name could provide. He showed up when he said he would. He was kind to her staff. He remembered that she didn't eat shellfish and quietly ensured it was never on the menu when they dined together. Small things, impossibly small. She had spent her entire adult life surrounded by people who wanted pieces of her. Her time, her signature, her name, her father's name before that. Ethan Callahan wanted nothing. It was the most disorienting experience of her life. The night it changed, really changed. Not in the slow, quiet way of glitter glue and too strong coffee, but the kind of changed that you feel arrive like weather. Was the Hartwell Foundation Gala in December. Victoria stood at the edge of the room, watching 200 of Chicago's most powerful people work the space, and she felt, as she often did at these events, completely alone inside the noise. Then Ethan appeared beside her with 2 glasses of sparkling water and said nothing. Just handed her one, stood with her, watched the room. After a long moment, she said quietly, "I hate these." "I know," he said. She turned to look at him. "How?" "You smile differently here than you do when you're with Lily." He paused. "With her it reaches your eyes." Victoria was silent. That's not a criticism, he added. I just notice things. You notice a lot of things, Mr. Callahan. Ethan, his voice was quiet. We're married. Even on paper, you can use my name. The orchestra shifted to something slower. Around them, couples drifted toward the dance floor. Victoria looked at him, really looked, the way she hadn't allowed herself to in 6 months of careful distance, and said,
"The contract ends in 3 weeks." "I know." And then whatever you want," he said simply. "That's always been true."
She looked at the dance floor, then back at him. Lily made me a Christmas card, she said, her voice slightly unsteady. She drew both of us in it, and herself. She wrote my family at the top. Ethan was very still. She loves easily, he said softly. She always has, even after losing her mom. He paused. She decides someone is hers and that's it. Must be exhausting for you, Victoria said. Protecting a heart that open. Worth every second. The words hung between them. Victoria felt the edge of everything she'd built. Every wall, every contract, every careful arrangement, tremble slightly, the way buildings do in wind when you're high enough to feel it. She held out her hand. "Dance with me," she said. "Not for the cameras. She stopped. Tried again. "Just because I want to." Ethan looked at her hand, then at her face. Then he smiled, slow and real and entirely unguarded, and took it.
"Yeah," he said.
"Okay." 3 weeks later, the contract expired. Neither of them mentioned it. On Christmas morning, Lily woke up at 6 a.m., ran into the living room, stopped dead at the sight of the tree, and then turned around and ran back to get both of them, pulling Victoria by one hand and her father by the other, absolutely insisting they both had to see it at the same time or it didn't count. Victoria stood in her pajamas, an indignity she had not experienced in a decade, in Ethan's living room, surrounded by Lily's drawings and Gerald the elephant and the smell of too strong coffee, and watched a 7-year-old lose her mind over a pile of presents under colored lights. Ethan's hand found hers, quietly, without announcement. She didn't pull away. Lily looked up and saw them and beamed, pure, uncomplicated, certain, like this was exactly how things were always supposed to be. Maybe, Victoria thought, holding on, that's the thing about children who love easily. Sometimes they see the shape of a family before anyone else does. And sometimes, if you're brave enough and lucky enough and willing to let a 7-year-old with duck boots and a one-eyed elephant rewrite your entire plan, they're right. The end.